Hi, here's old Claude again, talking still about Joseph. And this is part 2 of his years of preparation. Now, maybe some of you are thinking, I know my son, David, the producer, is thinking, will we never be done with Joseph? Now, my objective is this would be part 2, and then there's going to have to be a part 3. Okay, I mean, Joseph is a multifaceted character. So here's the situation. Joseph has been falsely accused by Potiphar's wife with attempted rape. And so Potiphar has him thrown into Pharaoh's prison. Then there, in Nothing Flat, the care of all the prisoners is given over to Joseph. A little later on, I like to try to explain that. But the keeper of the prison could see that the hand of the Lord was upon Joseph. So he had the care of all the prisoners. In time, the chief butler and the chief baker from Pharaoh's staff were in prison. They'd incurred Pharaoh's wrath. So they spend time getting acquainted. Then, and Joseph is caring for their needs. And then one night they both have a dream. And they are troubled by these dreams because they don't get the interpretation of them. And so Joseph could tell that they were sad on this given morning after their dreams. So he said, "What's the problem?" And so at least the chief butler said, "Well, we've had a dream." And Joseph said, "Well, does not the interpretation of dreams lie with God?" So the butler shared with him his dream, and then Joseph immediately gave the interpretation, and saying that within 3 days he would be restored to his position. Well, the baker, being encouraged by the favorable interpretation to the chief butler's dream, brought forth his dream. And he laid out all the details, and then Joseph said, "Well, in 3 days you will be hanged." And things came to pass, just as they said. In 3 days, the chief butler was released, and then the chief baker was hanged. And Joseph just kind of implored the chief butler, saying, "Man, would you remember me when you get out of here? I've been falsely accused, and I don't have any business being here. Just speak a good word to Pharaoh for me." That's just kind of being a little free with the scriptures, but that was the essence of it. So time elapses here, because what happened is that the chief butler forgot about Joseph and his request. And I think Joseph had to remain 2 more years in Pharaoh's prison. And I think this was kind of the fine-tuning that God was putting on Joseph. And I think principally for 2 reasons that Joseph had to be tried a little more. The first reason would have been that Joseph is, whenever these 2 years elapse, he's going to be elevated to a position like no one else in history to that point, and I don't think since, where a guy goes straight from the dungeon to ruling. And then the second, and maybe the more important reason, is that in some ways Joseph is going to have to discover mercy deeper than he's ever known before, because when he gets out, and if we just fast forward a little bit, after he gets elevated, when he first sees his brothers, he's going to remember the dreams that he had. But now, back to Pharaoh's prison here. So, 2 years. actually, Joseph is the prisoner of his own thoughts. Now, where before, when he was operating under Potiphar's authority, he could go in and out of the house, he could go out in the field or whatever. We don't know what the limits of his freedom were. But here in Pharaoh's prison, he didn't even have any weekend passes. He was stuck in prison, stuck actually as a prisoner of his own thoughts. And I kind of wondered, well, did he think about his grandfather Abraham and how Abraham was severely tested by having to offer up his son Isaac, which didn't have to be consummated, but it went right up to it. And then his own father, Jacob, who was sorely tried whenever he was having to, after coming back from living with his uncle Laban and securing a couple of wives there, he's going to have to face his brother Esau, who the last time he had seen Jacob threatened to kill him. So here Jacob is facing all of this, and this is when Jacob wrestled with the angel through the night and had his name changed to Israel, one having authority with God. So this would have been common knowledge to all the family. And Joseph was doubtless turning these thoughts over in his mind. Okay, the 2 years elapses. And then Pharaoh has a couple of dreams. And they trouble him. He dreamed one, and then woke up from that, turned around and dreamed another. And one was just as wild as the other. But this should have been a piece of cake to interpret for his wise men and his magicians, but they couldn't touch it. And then all of a sudden, the chief butler, who was right there amongst the servants, he remembered his fault this day. And he said that there was a guy in prison, a Hebrew slave, who could interpret dreams. So, in nothing flat, Pharaoh calls for Joseph, and they get him shaved and cleaned up. And here comes Joseph into Pharaoh's presence. And as one would gather it from the scriptures, Joseph is not the least bit in awe of Pharaoh and his court. And then Pharaoh tells him the dream and our dreams. And then Joseph said what he'd said before: does not the interpretation of dreams lie with God? And so the dreams are recounted, and Joseph said the two dreams are one, signifying the fact that this is something that God intends to do. And then Joseph was bold enough to go ahead and suggest a course of action of what ought to be done. And he laid it out, bing, 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 what ought to be done. And Pharaoh was tremendously impressed. And he thought, hey, we ought to do this. And all of his advisors around him, they agreed, we ought to do this. And then Pharaoh said, well, who else around here has the Spirit of God upon him like this man? And this is the key. This is the thing that Potiphar could not articulate, or the keeper of the prison, Pharaoh's prison, could not articulate, but which Pharaoh did, that the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, was upon Joseph, imparting wisdom right and left. And then let me here. I want to read this to you. What he did. Pharaoh said, inasmuch as God has shown you all this, and there's no one as discerning and wise as you, in 41:40 he says, you shall be over my house, and all my people shall be ruled according to your word. Only in regard to the throne will I be greater than you. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, see, I have set you over all the land of Egypt. Now, Joseph's dream of ruling had come partially true, but he will need to see his brothers for that to be fully realized. And we'll cover that in the next segment. Blessings on you.